There was a Nintendo Direct today. First one of the year, weirdly enough, considering it's now like June. But we're going to talk about some of the big reveals that are of interest and what this means for us in this year in terms of covering things. So let's break it all down on the backlog files. Welcome to the Backlog Files. I am Adam. It is June 9th, 2026, and we're going to talk about today's Nintendo Direct. Now, I watched it live. I took notes while I was working, and, I just kind of had my notebook out, and I was taking notes on the cool things that happened, and I left my notebook at work. So, that was fun. But we have enough stuff to talk about that I have, in my memory that we can discuss. And this is going to sound really stupid, but, it is what it is. So, let's talk about, why don't we start with, the show started out with, what was the first thing they did? They sat there, and this is going to make me look like an asshole because I didn't write any of this down. Well, let's talk about the big reveal. The big reveal, the Ocarina of Time, which had previously leaked. We knew it was coming, and it's not anything that's particularly shocking. What is a little surprising is that we didn't get any gameplay from it, so that is a little disappointing. And it would have been nice to get a little gameplay to see exactly what this is. Now, what we've heard so far is that it is going to be Breath of the Wild style, but for Ocarina of Time. And Breath of the Wild is a very different animal compared to Ocarina of Time in terms of like gameplay functionality and how deeply ingrained the narrative is with that, where it's like, famously with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you don't have to actually do the story. You can just go right to Ganon without actually leveling up anything and just fuck them up and hope for the best. But it's a little bit different here. But, it is kind of... It's an interesting approach, and we'll see how that works in practice. The other thing was Kingdom Hearts 4. And this is something I did not anticipate seeing here. I thought this was going to be, something that we were going to see at its own standalone thing. And the idea that Kingdom Hearts 4 is going to be played on Switch 2 at launch is something that I really like. I mean, I really appreciate that. I don't have to, dig out a PlayStation or anything to play it. And I think the idea that it's going to run native and not cloud, that's also very helpful. Because famously the cloud games on Switch didn't work quite right, and you needed a constant internet connection. So the fact that it's running, installed on the console is definitely an improvement. The gameplay that we saw from Kingdom Hearts 4 does look interesting. It is a little bit strange to me that this is Kingdom Hearts 4. Because it feels like a real departure from what the past Kingdom Hearts games were. Like, what this is, Sora is stuck in Quadratum, and now he needs to escape, and like, oh, look, the darkness is here because Sora arrived, this wasn't here before. It's an interesting, situation that they put themselves in, and they put these characters in, but the issue is, like, how does that work? And I saw a lot of people like, oh, good, they got rid of the Disney, and it's like, that's the entire thing with Kingdom Hearts. Like, it's the entire thing. It's like, you were here for the plot? Like, is that what you were here for? No, you're here for the gameplay, and you're here for the Disney. Like, that's what this is. So all of that's, it's kind of interesting. I like the gameplay flow, and quite honestly, I'm gonna stand by and I will apply the clown makeup and be prepared to be wrong on this. I don't think the next Kingdom Hearts game we get is Kingdom Hearts 4. I think there's going to be another game between now and then, and I think it's going to be like, how 0.2 came out, a fragmentary passage to show off like oh, and this is what, this is how you're going to be able to play. I think, and how Kingdom Hearts is going to run in this new engine, I think that we're going to get some of that. But in that same conversation, it was a very good showing, not just here, but across all of, this summer game reveal season for Square. Because they had Kingdom Hearts 4. We have Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3, which is, it's going to be 1.5, 2.5, 2.83 on Switch 2, running on the console, which is, good. But, the other thing is, there's a new Final Fantasy game that is HD 2D, and I'm surprised it's taken them this long to do that. And that's pretty cool. And then there's also, what's it called? There's also that new Dragon Quest game where it's Pokemon-like. And I'm surprised, again, that it took them this long to do that. Dragon Quest has gotten experimental, where they did have, before Pokopia, they did have their version of Minecraft, and that was something that was, kind of fun with builders, but it is interesting that they're taking this approach now. And it's also not the first time that Square has taken one of their IPs and made a Pokemon-like, because they also did World of Final Fantasy, which was kind of that, plus the Tsum Tsum toys from Disney. So, all of that said, it is some cool ideas, that they're fiddling around with. So I think we have some interesting things from them. Plus, also, earlier in this whole situation, we had the reveal of Final Fantasy VII Revelations, which was the part 3 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is coming out next year. Plus, outside of this, we also had Final Fantasy X-10-2, which is coming to Switch 2 with higher-end graphics. So we have a lot of really cool things coming from Square. And I think all of this is kind of interesting, considering we didn't really have a good roadmap for them going into this. Other games that I found interesting, the DK thing I'm kind of interested in, because I don't have the deepest bench of knowledge when it comes to the Donkey Kong games. I've played none of them. I played Donkey Kong Jr. because it came with the e-reader, but I don't think that really counts. But I've never played into Donkey Kong Countries. I've never played Donkey Kong 64, and this might give me a reason to go back and do that. Pokopia, getting DLC, not entirely surprising. I think I said this was a likely conclusion when the game came out, so obviously we're going to be covering the Pokopia DLC as it drops, with the first one happening in August. And I think that it's interesting that it seems like we're getting 2 new towns to fuck around in. The first town is underwater, so presumably based on what the game is so far, I would assume that it's Cinnabar Island is the one that's underwater. And then there's a second town that's in the last DLC that comes next year. I'm going to assume that the last DLC pack is going to add in Lavender Town. That's the most likely. And there's also a kind of large lack of representation of ghosts in this game. And I think that, Lavender Town is the inn to be able to do that. So let's see what goes on there. Not Wii Sports. Well, I mean, it's Wii Sports Resort on the Switch too, but Nintendo Switch Sports Resort looks pretty cool. I'm not overly thrilled by the selection of games. I do like the fact that skateboarding is there, and it seems like if there's an open explore mode with that, I might fuck around with that a little bit. I'm a little disappointed that they put the airplanes in this again, even though, yes, Pilot Wings, and we just talked about this 2 weeks ago, Pilot Wings Resort for the 3DS was kind of built around the free-flying mode in Wii Sports Resort. The idea that, what's it called? The idea that we're going to spend all this time in what's it called? In this alone, it's kind of a little disappointing. The wave racing is kind of cool, but again, it's like I think the entire mileage people are going to get out of this is like how willing are you to commit to motion controls, and I think that's going to be the big issue. And they did spend way too much time showing off the thumb wrestling mode. Like, why of all things did you think like here's the thing that's going to sell this game, thumb wrestling? And it's like, okay, sure, like the wave racing could have been cool, giving us a deeper look at at that. Archery is always kind of fun. I'm surprised that like they didn't put sword fighting in, because sword fighting was one of the really fun modes from Wii Sports Resort. But I mean, almost certainly we're looking at DLC for this. You know who wasn't here, and I think that was kind of weird, was Mario. Like, I went into this fully anticipating getting a Mario, what's it called? A Mario, the 3D Mario reveal. And he was nowhere to be found in this. And also the other thing that was kind of shocking that it wasn't in here was no Nintendo Switch Online Nintendo Classics titles. Because usually that's like a mainstay of this, where it's like, oh, well, we're going to release, what's it called? We're going to release these titles on Nintendo Switch Online. I'm surprised there was no port of Pikmin 4. We are getting ports of Xenoblade Chronicles 1, 2, and 3, which is kind of cool. I might go back and play those now. Star Fox looks good as ever. I think we're going to play Star Fox probably tonight. And we might have another episode. I don't know if we want to do 4 episodes in 1 week. We might actually just push that to next week, and then push Elebits again, because we do have the Tribeca showcase on Saturday. But there's that. There's also a demo of Kingdom Hearts. We can do both of those in one episode. Show how well it runs on the Switch 2 in handheld. What else have we got? The new Fire Emblem looks cool. I've never really fucked with Fire Emblem, not because I don't like it, but it's like, I never got into it initially, and it's one of those things that's like, do I get into it now? I might. We might try it out because some of the Fire Emblem games are on Switch Online. But, we'll see. What else have we got that was there? Xenoblade's another one like that where we might fuck around with that. Who knows? And there is Xenoblade 4, Xenoblade Genesis, which is coming out next year. I feel like there was something like, Splatoon Raiders. I didn't know that was a single-player game, so we might do that. Again, never really fucked around with Splatoon because I don't really fuck with multiplayer games. So Splatoon Raiders coming out as a console game is kind of interesting to me in a morbid curiosity kind of way. And then also, the one that kind of caught me completely off guard that I was like, oh shit, maybe that looks like it's worth trying, is there's that One Piece game where it's One Piece but you're running a restaurant. And I was like, okay, I can fuck with that. The pixel art style looks endearing, and there's something about it that I'm like, yes, let's give this a shot and see what happens. So I think we will be fucking with that a little bit, and we'll see what happens. I think that's really all that I had that I wanted to talk about, because that's kind of like where I was. And, it does leave some lingering questions, like, yes, we had to destroy all monsters melee because Godzilla does not give a fuck about GTA 6 coming out in November, but the only other release appears to be the port of Metaphor Refantasia, or Refantasio, or I don't know what the fuck it is, but like, that game being ported to the Switch 2 is the only other really big title in November, because again, everyone's kind of, it's kind of like a gravity sink in the video game market with what's GTA 6 going to do. And how do we adjust for GTA 6, coming out and just being the game of the month? And I think it's a valid question, and it's a valid issue for the industry to work around. But it's just one of those things like, what if GTA gets delayed again? And I know that, November 20th, or November 21st, whatever it is, right around there, that's the big day where GTA 6 is finally coming out. But what if it doesn't? And now we just have this giant vacuum. And I do wonder if part of the reason why they didn't announce a release date yet for Legend of Zelda is because they don't, I wonder if there is some kind of industry rumbling that, maybe this isn't happening when they say it's going to. I wonder if that's the case. And again, I'm really shocked. No, there are a lot of mainstays that I expected to see going into this that just weren't there. Is Mario Kart World done? They did all that DLC for Mario Kart 8 on the Switch. There was so much First of all, there was DLC for Mario Kart 8 when it came out on the Wii U. Then when it got ported to the Switch, there was more DLC on top of that. Are we just done with Mario Kart World now? There's just no more. Also, no, the other big surprising one, I was half expecting a reveal of Metroid Prime. Or Metroid Prime 2 and 3, because both of those came out on the Wii U. Metroid Prime was remastered on the Switch, and Metroid Prime 4 is on the Switch and the Switch 2. So, why is it that Metroid Prime 2 and 3 are not there? It's only on the Wii U, and if I remember correctly, it's only available to play on the Wii U if you have either a physical disc for Metroid Prime 3 Corruption for the Wii, because it is backward compatible, or if you have the digital copy that you bought, because I don't think it was ever released physical. I think you had to buy it digital, and it's just kind of weird that we haven't gotten that yet. It's weird that we haven't gotten a 3D Mario announcement yet. I wasn't anticipating Wind and Waves to be here. I don't know why people were anticipating it. Pokemon tends not to let their big reveals go to Nintendo Directs. What will end up happening is they'll do a Pokemon Presents, or they'll put out something to show off their new game, and then they'll do a companion trailer in the Nintendo Direct. If we were going to get anything from Wind and Waves, I would have thought it would have been the trailer we already got. But I wasn't anticipating anything new. And the other thing I was a little surprised about is that we do know that in the source code for the emulator that runs Fire Red and Leaf Green, it can also run Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And that's already in the code, and there's references to it in the code. I'm surprised we didn't get that either announced or released. And the same goes for Pokemon Coliseum. XD is out on Switch Online for the GameCube Nintendo Classics, but they have not done the same for Coliseum. And it's just kind of one of those weird decisions. And it's going along with that, we talked about it with Fire Red. Why is it that you have this lengthy sequence in this game that is designed entirely to allow trading to games that it cannot trade to because those games are not available in this platform? It's a really, again, weird decision. And then, there's no indication of when that's coming. I would have liked for a more clear look at what the later of the DLCs is for Pokopia. What was the thing that led off this entire... I can't remember what game led off. Rhythm Heaven Groove was the one that led off. And it's I mean, I'll fuck with that when it comes out. I like a good rhythm game. I'll fuck with that one. And there were a bunch of other things. They had a little Souls-like showcase where it's Lies of P. The definitive edition is going to be coming. There was another one, Lords of the Fallen, will be coming, and it's all right, let's see what those are. But I am, I'm moderately hyped, and I think that if the Kingdom Hearts trailer wasn't there, I probably wouldn't have been as big on it. But when they showed off Kingdom Hearts, and I would have been content with that. Because I wasn't anticipating in a Nintendo Direct anything more than oh, and by the way, we're porting these games to the Switch too. And look, I know that there's an issue with someone going out and buying ports of the same game on several consoles. I realize that's a problem. That said, it's just easier for me, because I do want to do Kingdom Hearts on the YouTube channel. It is easier for me to play it and run it through the laptop that way, and play it on the screen and then run it through the laptop and all of that. It's just, it makes it easier. It's not two screens. It's not as taxing on the laptop, you know. So that's that one. Like that for me, that's a good, you know, that's a good thing. And for people who haven't played yet, you know, here's a new entryway, and it's gonna run smoothly, or hopefully it's gonna run smoothly. Which is why I think they showed, like, the demo is the Kingdom Hearts 3 demo, because it's like, this is the most taxing of these games on the hardware. So it's like, if this runs smoothly, all the rest of them will also run smoothly. And with 4 coming, that's good to hear. I'm just a little curious as to, you know, what does, as if you're not someone who plays the Nintendo JRPGs, like, I'm thinking about the kid version of me who was looking at this release slate. Like, me when I was, you know, when I was the age that I had my GameCube, when I was in elementary and middle school, going back and looking at this slate, am I excited for this release slate? That's like, Pokopia would have been the kind of game I would have fucked with, and I would have pestered my parents to buy me the DLC expansion pass for it. But, like, Xenoblade wouldn't have done it for me. Like, Ocarina of Time probably wouldn't have done it for me. I probably would have been like, hey, my thing I keep coming back to is, where's Mario? And I get we just got the Yoshi game and all of that, but like, and we just got, oh my god, the Cybertruck's disgusting. And again, no woman in the car. Never seen a woman in a Cybertruck. The idea of, like, where's the next 3D Mario game? The next 3D platformer? Be it Super Mario 3D Galaxy or World or whatever we want to call it, universe. Because we had Super Mario 3D Land, we had Super Mario 3D World. We haven't had a new one of those since Super Mario 3D World. Where's the next version of that? Or where's the next version of Odyssey? Or Super Mario Sunshine or Galaxy? Where is that? And again, that's nowhere to be seen here. Maybe that's next year's big November release. And again, the other thing I'm really shocked about is Smash. Where is Smash? So, like, yes, I'm interested in them, and there are a lot of things here that I'm happy with. And there are a few things that I would like to eventually see get handled. Like, I would like to see the original Paper Mario redone in style A Thousand Year Door. That would be nice. I would like to see them do a Mario and Luigi, either Superstar Saga or Partners in Time. I don't think Partners in Time gets enough credit, to be completely honest. But I would like to see Partners in Time ported into the style of Brothership. That would be kind of cool too. There are plenty of games that do still exist that just aren't there. Like, is there another Mario Golf in development? Because, like, I didn't hate Super Rush, and I do still really like Toadstool Tour. Is there another Chibi Robo in development? Another Luigi's Mansion? Do we have another Mario Baseball? Do we have, like, there are so many things that are like, oh, well, where is this? And I think that bodes well, because, again, we're only in the second year of the Switch's life cycle. I think that's something we have to take into consideration with this whole thing, is that we are just now passing the 1 year mark of the Switch 2, which is why, like, at the very beginning they were like, okay, so this is the title that's coming out for the Switch, and will also be playable on the Switch 2, but everything else from here on out is Switch 2 primarily. And there may be a Switch version of it, but it will primarily be Switch 2 stuff. And I get that we're still early on in the cycle, but I don't know, again, if you're someone who didn't buy a Switch 2 already, if you're someone who was waiting for the title to do on the Switch 2, is anything that was shown here going to push you over the edge to buy a Switch 2? Like, 15 years ago, when the 3DS came out, Ocarina of Time was ported in 3D, as was Star Fox 64, and both of those came out in the same year. Neither of those were system sellers for the Switch, for the 3DS, because the 3DS ended up getting a massive price cut and the Ambassador program. For those of you who don't remember, anyone who bought a 3DS at launch got a bunch of free games when the price cut happened, because they were like, hey, we're sorry that you paid $250 for this thing and it's now $170 or $180, so we're going to give you a bunch of free Game Boy and Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color games for free. And that was, it was a kind of a cool thing. And then the Game Boy Advance games never came to the eShop. They were always, exclusively to the Ambassador members. It was like Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, the Minish Cap, Golden Sun, Mystery. I think it was Mystery Dungeon, Red Rescue Team. There were a few games. There were like 10 games and 10 Game Boy Color games, or 10 Game Boy Color / original Game Boy games. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't think a remake of Ocarina of Time is a system seller. It's something that's going to be like, oh, I don't have a Switch 2, but I'm going to run out and get a Switch 2 to play this. I don't think that, like, being able to play Lies of P is going to be a system seller, because, like, if you're someone who likes Lords of the Fallen or likes these Souls-likes, this is a good thing to have on your Switch, but it's not something that's going to be like, I got to run out and get a Switch right now, or a Switch 2 right now. Like, I already like these games are here. Or if you're someone who already has it and is like, well, let me give this a shot, that's different. But, like, I think that, like, what they need is they need a solid, like, this is something you need to run out right now and get this game for. And I'm sorry, but Ocarina of Time has been done to death. We had the remake, and then if you want to play Ocarina of Time right now, you can. On the existing hardware. On a Nintendo Switch 2, when I go home today, I can go home and I can play Ocarina of Time exactly as it was when it first came out, because the game's on there. So, like, if I have a Switch, what's my incentive to upgrade to the Switch 2, especially when we don't have any gameplay footage showing, like, oh, and this is how it's going to look so much better. And the same thing goes for, like, okay, well, Star Fox 64 is being ported, and now here it is, and it's like, okay, but I can play Star Fox 64 on the Switch 2. As it is, without having to pay another $50. What you need is, like, what's going to be the big thing that's going to sell the system? And it's like, is the big thing that's going to sell the system, like, if Pokopia wasn't it, what is? What's going to be the thing that's going to get people in? Is it going to be a new Animal Crossing? Which we haven't had that announced yet. Like, Super Mario Wonder got ported. Like, everything that we've had so far have been, like, the Switch 2 editions of Switch games. There hasn't been a solid, like, Pokopia was a Switch 2 exclusive. Madden was exclusively on Switch 2, not on the original Switch. What about, like, Hyrule Warriors was a Switch 2 exclusive. Super Mario Kart World was a Switch 2 exclusive. And there is Switch 2 exclusive content in the things they've ported over, like Mario Party and Super Mario Wonder and Pokemon Legends ZA, but that wasn't even exclusive stuff. It's just that the game runs better. And I think for ZA, the only use case I found for that made it run better was shiny hunting in the DLC, because the load screens are less. Like, there's an upgrade pack for $5 for Animal Crossing, which didn't add a ton. There's an upgrade pack for what was the other game? But, like, you can upgrade Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild. And none of these things are bad. And I do like the approach of, like, hey, you don't have to buy the entire game a second time. We're going to sell you a $10 upgrade pack. I prefer that. And there are some games that didn't even have that. Like Scarlet and Violet, you can just put it in and it runs smoothly. If you're watching our Scarlet playthrough on the YouTube channel, you'll see that, like, hey, we're playing it on the Switch 2. The first 2 episodes have a little bit of issues, but that's because I was using the wrong software. But once you get past, like, episode 2 or 3, it's running at 60 and it's running properly. Graphical issue aside that keeps causing the colors to glitch. But by and large, it's like the entire thing, it runs a lot more smoothly, and I didn't have to pay anything extra for that. So all of that said, it's like, what is the incentive for anyone to buy a Switch 2 coming out of this Presents, or this Direct? And I don't think there's anything here that's like, I need to run out and buy a Switch 2 right now because this title here is only on the Switch 2, and it's something that I need to go out and get this. Ocarina of Time Remade is something that is going to be fun, and it's something that I'm going to get, but it's not something that's going to tide me over as a fan of Legend of Zelda until the next new Legend of Zelda game comes. But it's not something that's going to tide me over until like how Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D tided me over until A Link Between Worlds came out. It's not going to be the thing that's like, oh, well, we have to do, like, you have to get this right now because, otherwise you won't be able to experience this thing. And it's like, I'm kind of surprised that, like, they didn't come out with, like, I'm trying to think what's something that would sell a console. And it's like, coming out and saying, like, hey, we have a new Mario game coming, or hey, there's a new Smash coming. Or like, hey, here's some new stuff for Mario Kart World that, you won't want to miss. I think that's kind of it. And it's like, I'm not super concerned. The Switch 2, as far as I know, is selling fine. And look, as someone who has adopted the Switch 2, I'm perfectly content with this. But if I'm someone who hasn't bought one yet, if I'm someone who's like, well, can I buy this right now? Do I wait? I don't think there's anything here. If you're someone who is in the bag for Xenoblade, I don't think Xenoblade Genesis is going to... Anyone who wanted it is going to go out and has already gotten it because they're like, oh, well, there will be another Xenoblade game here. We knew about Fortune's Wrath, the new Fire Emblem game. We knew about that before this. That wasn't a new announcement. And it's like, again, Kingdom Hearts is not a system seller because you can play it on anything else. You can play it on your PlayStation. I think you can play it on Xbox. You can play it on the Switch. Not great, but you can play it on the Switch. You can play it on the on your computer. There is no shortage of ways to legally play Kingdom Hearts, and there's also several ways to play it, through piracy. There's nothing here that you're going to get that's new. And I think that's kind of the big issue that I had with this. If you're not already pre-sold on the Switch 2 ecosystem, this is not going to get you to go out and buy a Switch 2. This is very much a presentation for people who already have the Switch 2, which is, I guess, fortunate for me, but unfortunate for people who are looking for that reason. And where we are right now economically, and with the personal economic issues that are plaguing a lot of people as we try to, navigate this world where it's like prices are going up for everyone on everything. And I think they just increased the price of the Switch too. Again, I didn't look into that because I already have one. So I didn't. That wasn't something that I was like, oh, let me go and make sure that because I bought mine back in February. But it's not like oh, well, what are we? What's the game plan here? That's the question that I have, is that it's like, what are they going to release that's going to make people run out and get this? And it's like, is the answer just they're biding their time till Wind and Waves comes out? But the fact that we didn't get any showing of Wind and Waves in this Direct, even hey, look, here is what we're releasing, even if it is like, oh, look, this is our, this game was announced. I don't think they're really anticipating that coming out until late next year. Like, I was kind of operating under the assumption that this game was going to be releasing in early in the year, but that the fact that it wasn't there today tells me that they're not anticipating this game releasing 6 months from now. I think we're looking at 12 to 18 months until release, which is unfortunate. considering that like Legend ZA has run its course. You know, there's nothing else coming with that, and that is unfortunate. But on that note, I think that's as good a place as any to wrap up for today. Usually we stop off for a break to promote our other podcasts, but we didn't do that today. We'd rather get through all the news. So, like I said, we will be back on Saturday. We'll be talking about the Tribeca Games Showcase. We'll be playing a bunch of indie games and maybe talking to people, but who knows. We'll be doing all of that this weekend. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week. Where is my device? Here it is.
Before you go, I also write fiction. My newest novel, Succession Planning, is out on August 28th, available both in paperback and an ebook. It follows a journalism grad stuck managing a store while the owners wage a quiet war over who takes over the business. It's about ambition, inertia, and taking the easiest choice. The link is in the description. That's Succession Planning, out on August 28th.